Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling a true giant, Hannah Arendt's masterpiece, The Origins of Totalitarianism. It's one of those books that really changes how you see the world. So, how does an entire society just completely break down? That's the chilling question at the heart of Arendt's work. And she wasn't talking about just one bad leader or a single event, no. She was digging into something much deeper. How the very fabric of reality itself can just unravel for millions of people all at once.
Now, Arendt's big argument is that this kind of collapse, it doesn't just happen overnight. It's more like a gradual erosion, a pathway with very distinct stages. And that's exactly what we're going to do in this explainer. We're going to walk that path together, step by step, to really get a handle on her powerful analysis.
All right, let's dive right in. The interesting thing is, Arendt doesn't start with the totalitarian movement itself. Nope. She goes way back, long before they take power. She's looking for those initial weaknesses, the structural cracks that were already there in society, making it vulnerable from the get-go.
And one of the first things she points to is this really crucial distinction. You see, she says there was the old school anti-Semitism, which was more about religious prejudice or social exclusion. But then something new came along, what she calls modern anti-Semitism. And this was totally different. It wasn't just prejudice, it became a full-blown political ideology, a single, total explanation for everything that was going wrong. Economic problems, social unrest, you name it. It was that simple, seductive answer to incredibly complex problems.
Okay, so to really grasp this vulnerability, Arendt makes another key distinction, the state and the nation. They're not the same thing. Think of the state as the legal administrative structure, the government, the laws. The nation, on the other hand, is the people, the cultural body. And her point was that Jewish communities were often connected to the state. They were protected by rulers, they were important financiers, but they were never really seen as fully part of the cultural nation. And that, right there, created this deep, profound vulnerability. I mean, think about it. Being protected by the government is not the same thing as truly belonging to the community. So what happens when that old ruling order starts to crumble? Well, the very group that was tied to it is suddenly left completely exposed. They become this perfect, easy target for all the anger and frustration bubbling up in society. So you have these vulnerabilities just sitting there under the surface. But how do they actually get activated? Well, to show us, Arendt points to a really famous historical case, the Dreyfus Affair in France. This, for her, is where you can see this dangerous new dynamic in action. In the Dreyfus Affair wasn't just some legal mistake, a miscarriage of justice. Oh, no, it became a full-blown national crisis. The actual facts of the case almost stopped mattering. What became important was how it ripped the country into two warring camps. On one side, you had people demanding truth, facts, and justice. And on the other, you had a side pushing this powerful, emotional narrative of national honor and betrayal. And what was driving this split? Arendt says it was institutions choosing to protect themselves instead of the truth. The army was terrified that admitting they made a mistake would totally undermine their authority. So what did they do? They doubled down on the lie. And that choice had absolutely devastating consequences for everyone. This whole affair just brilliantly illustrates a key turning point. Suddenly, a simple, emotionally charged story, the nation versus its traitors, started to matter more to huge numbers of people than actual verifiable facts. It was the moment reality itself became negotiable. Now, this idea of power being completely detached from truth, it wasn't just happening at home. At the very same time, European powers were out there perfecting a new model of domination overseas through imperialism. It was like a laboratory for unaccountable power. So Arendt's argument goes like this. Imperialism really took off when economic expansion just outgrew the borders of the nation-state. And this created these brand new territories where power could operate completely free from the usual rules. Things like law, citizenship, or any real accountability. And this whole process created a really dangerous new playbook for how to govern. Suddenly, you could control huge populations without their consent, you could take all their resources without any obligation to them, and you can manage the whole thing through this cold, detached bureaucracy, where, get this, no single person was ever really responsible. And here's Arendt's critical warning, and it's a big one. These habits of unchecked power, of race thinking, and this kind of bureaucratic control, they don't just stay out there in the colonies. Eventually, that poison flows back home. It starts to reshape and corrupt politics right where it started.
Okay, so now we can start to see how all the pieces come together. You've got a vulnerable group to blame, you've got this idea that a powerful story is more important than the truth, and you have this new model of power with no accountability. Arendt shows us how all of that gets assembled into something terrifyingly new, the totalitarian movement.
And let's be super clear on this, because Arendt certainly was. A totalitarian movement is not a normal political party, not even close. See, regular parties represent different interests within the system we already have. Totalitarian movements, they want to burn that system to the ground and replace reality itself with their own single, all-encompassing story.
And these movements are like a magnet for people who feel isolated, atomized, adrift in a world that just feels too complicated. Why? Because they offer a powerful sense of coherence. They offer a story that seems to explain everything and a community where you finally feel like you belong. And in their world, if reality doesn't fit the story, well, then it's reality that's got it wrong. So you can see how, for someone who feels like they're drowning in confusion, the clean, internal logic of the movement story becomes way more important and honestly way more desirable than the messy, complicated actual truth.
And all of this brings us to what is maybe Arendt's most chilling conclusion of all. What is the ultimate goal of this entire system once it finally gets power?
The goal, the final aim, isn't just to control what people do or say. That's small time. The real goal is to fundamentally remake what people are. It's not just about political power, it's about total domination over the very idea of what it means to be human.
So what's the greatest enemy of a system like this? According to Arendt, it's something inside every one of us. Human spontaneity. Our amazing, innate ability to think a new thought, to make an independent choice, to start something new and unexpected. That unpredictability is the one thing a system of total control just cannot stand. And that leads us to its final, horrifying goal, to prove that unique, spontaneous individuals are unnecessary. The whole logic of the system leads to this one point, turning human beings into predictable, interchangeable cogs in a machine. It's about demonstrating that as unique individuals, we are fundamentally superfluous, that we just don't matter.
So, we've walked the path that Arendt laid out for us, right from those first tiny cracks in society all the way to the chilling logic of total domination. And she leaves us with this incredibly urgent question. If the final stage of this whole process is the destruction of our ability to think for ourselves, then what's our first line of defense? It has to be guarding that very capacity, in ourselves and in our society. That, she tells us, is where we absolutely must begin.